Welcome Raiders to the Rail Raiders Infinite tutorial. Rail Raiders is a fast-paced game of interstellar railway robbery for 2 to 4 players. To start the game, each player is going to need to pick one unique raider and gather its appropriate miniature. I'm going to set this game up for 3 players. Then you're going to need to gather the High Noon deck and pull 8 cards per player to build the unique High Noon deck that you'll be using for this game. The remaining High Noon cards that did not get pulled are returned to the box. Then you're going to need to shuffle the Long Arm of the Law deck, or as I'll call it, the Lawbot deck, as well as the Loot deck, and have these 3 decks by the board within reach of all players. Then you need to build your train. Your train will always have the caboose and locomotive train cars, so find those and place them on opposite ends of the board. The number of cars that go between these will be determined by the number of players. If you have 2 players, it'll be 4. If you have 3 players, it'll be 5, and 4 players will have 6 train cars. So we'll take our stack of train cars, shuffle them, and deal the appropriate number between the 2 cars, and leave them face down. Then we're going to need to gather the token piles to play this game, which include the double dollar token pile, as well as the loot token pile. But for the loot token pile, you're going to need to have all the loot tokens so that their treasure face up, and that the number is face down. And lastly, for the setup, you're going to need to determine who the dealer is. And to do that, each player is going to need to roll off. But Rail Raiders uses a unique kind of dice, so I'll explain how rolling off works in this game. The unique dice in this game resemble poker cards. And the 6 faces from lowest quality to highest quality are as follows: 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. Whenever players roll off, they'll roll a minimum of 5 dice, and attempt to make the best hand with 5 dice. It's possible throughout the game that you may roll more than 5 dice, however when you're making a hand, you're only using 5 dice. So you're going to pick the best 5 for you. If you're not familiar with how poker hands work, we have a reference card here, which lays them out for you, with rank 1 being the worst hand, and rank 8 being the best. And it's pretty self-explanatory. 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, and 5 of a kind simply means trying to match that many number of symbols. A full house is having 3 of a kind and 2 of a kind. A straight is having 5 dice in ascending order. So it can be 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, or it can be 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. As long as the order is correct, that's a straight. And if you have none of these, it is simply a high dice. So just as an example here, we're going to take these 5 dice and roll them. And here, I've got a pair of kings. If 2 players have the same rank of hand, for instance, if player 2 here has a pair of 9s, the winner is determined by who has the best quality. In this example, player 1 has a pair of kings, and kings are better than 9s. Therefore, player 1 wins. But if 2 or more players have exactly the same hand at exactly the same quality, then the tying players will need to roll off again until there is no longer any more tying players. Over the course of the game, players might acquire abilities that allow them to re-roll dice. And if multiple players have the ability to do this, then it works as follows. After every player has rolled their initial hand, then starting with the active player and proceeding clockwise, you will first declare that you intend to re-roll your dice and declare which dice you intend to re-roll. So here, if player 1 wanted to re-roll and they had an ability that said that they were allowed to re-roll up to 2 dice, they can decide, well, I simply want to re-roll 1 dice or 2. But first they make that declaration, and then they go in clockwise order. Each player makes the declarations of if they want to re-roll and which dice they intend to re-roll, and once every player has either passed or declared which dice they would like to re-roll, then each player takes those dice and re-rolls simultaneously. And then each player makes the best hand with the dice they've got. No dice may be re-rolled more than once for whatever reason, so whatever the second result is of your dice is the result you must keep. And that's how roll-offs work. This is the main mechanic of the game, so if you understand this, you understand 90% of the game. So whoever wins the roll-off to become the dealer will take the dealer token and place it beside themselves. They will be the first player in the upcoming round. But before the game officially starts, there is a pre-round that takes place before the game proceeds into traditional turns. And this is where players can decide where they would like to board the train. In clockwise order, starting with the dealer, you can decide to either enter in on the caboose or at any point further along the train. However, if you want to go at a point further in the train, you must roll for it, so it's a riskier endeavor. If you want to roll for it, you'll take the number of that train from the caboose and add 2 to it. For example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if Huckleberry wanted to instead try to land on this train car is 1 plus 2 equals 3. And that's the hand rank minimum he must roll if he wants to successfully land on this train car. If he succeeds, great. He gets to start his turn here. If he fails, then he did not get on the train car and must remain off of it so that he may attempt to reboard it next turn. So let's just say that Huckleberry decided to go to the caboose, Typhoon successfully managed to enter the first train car, and Mother Superior unfortunately did not make it on. After the players have made these choices, the game then proceeds to normal player turns. And the turn starts with Huckleberry because they are the dealer. So, at the very start of your turn, you will draw a high noon card. But keep in mind of the train car you start your turn in. Here, Huckleberry is starting his turn in the caboose, and the caboose says that he does not have to draw a high noon card if he does not want to. The reason being is, this high noon deck is your time limit. Once the high noon deck runs out of cards, the game will end at the end of that round. So you want as much time as possible to gather as much loot as you can before the game ends. But the high noon deck has abilities that can range from good or bad, depending on the draw, and they might affect how you are planning to perform your turn. But after resolving the high noon card, you discard it. And now Huckleberry can perform his turn. During your turn, you get to perform 3 actions, and the actions you can perform are as follows. You can move, you can start a showdown, you can search your train car, or you can pass. And the only restrictions are that you cannot perform the same action more than twice on your turn. He decides to move, so he moves into an adjacent car. When you move into a face-down car, or if you start your turn on a face-down car, you will flip it over. There are 3 components to any train car. 1 is the number of Lawbot cards you will draw. 2 is the number of face-down treasure tokens you will place on this car. And 3 is a special effect of this specific train car. Here the passenger car says if you start your turn here and this car is face up, one of the lowest ranking Lawbots here moves 1 car towards the locomotive. Other cars might have effects that trigger once the train car is flipped over. Just be mindful of what the effect is and resolve it when necessary. So now we're going to need to draw Lawbot cards for this train car. We'll take the top card of the deck and place it by the car. These Lawbot cards will add Lawbots onto the train car we're drawing them for. And some, like this one, have an ability called Grit. If this is the case, then this ability will stay with this train car and will remain in play until an effect discards it or until a showdown occurs that involves Lawbots. If it does not have the Grit keyword, then you discard it after resolving it. But this one does have Grit, so it will remain here. And we'll add a deputy miniature onto the car. There are 3 types of Lawbots here. Deputies on the left, sheriffs in the middle, and marshals on the right. We'll get into the details of any special roles they have when I describe the showdown action. But for now, let's finish setting up this train car. The second Lawbot card says to discard the top card of the high noon deck, and so time ticks forward. Then we'll randomly take 2 of our treasure tokens here and place them onto the train car. And now our train car has been fully revealed. If it is the case that you draw another Grit card, it is placed on top of any previous Grit cards for that train car, so that only 1 Grit card remains in play. If you draw a Lawbot card that requires you to spawn more Lawbots and there are no longer any more in your pool, you will instead move a matching Lawbot of the type you need from another car in the train and move it to the car you need it to be at, because there is a limit of 14 Lawbots to a single train. So now that Huckleberry has moved, he has 2 actions remaining, and he can decide to just move past this Lawbot into the next train car. He cannot search this train car because if there are any Lawbots on the train car that you are attempting to search, they prevent you from searching. So if Huckleberry wants a chance at these tokens, he's going to need to destroy the lawbot there first. And to do that, he'll perform a showdown action. A showdown is when you start blasting at somebody, so you can choose to shoot at another raider or to shoot at all the lawbots. If you shoot at a raider, the lawbots do not participate. Let's say Huckleberry wants to shoot at the lawbot. This will start a fight, and Huckleberry will roll off against the lawbots. Whoever is to the active player's left will roll for the lawbots. However, other raiders in that same car can participate in the shootout, and so they'll also roll off. This is a free-for-all game, and each player is out for themselves and trying to get the most money while trying to prevent the other players from getting any advantages. So here, Typhoon could decide to participate, but he was controlling the lawbots. If this is the case, then control of the lawbots will move to that player's left. If it's the case that all players in the game are participating in a shootout, then whomever is the dealer will roll for the lawbots, as well as themselves, and decide how they perform. So you could intentionally perform poorly. After deciding who is participating and who is not, each player will take their dice and roll off, trying to make the best hands as I mentioned. The person controlling the lawbots might get some special abilities depending on which lawbots are in the fight. They all work together. So if there is at least one sheriff on the lawbot team, the lawbot player will get to reroll one dice. If there is at least one marshal on that team, the lawbot player will get to add one dice to their pool. And always keep in mind any grid effects that might affect this train car. There can be only one winner, so whomever has the best hand will get to decide what happens to all of the losers. If the lawbots lose a fight, then the lowest ranking lawbot will be destroyed. And then depending on the rank of that lawbot, the winner will earn a number of double dollars equal to that lawbot's rank, and place it by themselves or on their player card. Let's say Huckleberry won this fight, so he destroyed a lawbot, and now gets to decide what happens to Typhoon, because Typhoon lost. If a raider loses a fight, the winner gets to push them onto an adjacent car, either forward or backward. So let's say Huckleberry pushes Typhoon backward. Then, if the raider that just got pushed in this way had more double dollars than the pushing player would get to steal one double dollar from the loser. And that is not currently the case because Typhoon has no money and Huckleberry has one. But if, let's say, Typhoon had two double dollars, then after he got pushed, Huckleberry would then steal one. So if you're a rich player, you probably don't want to participate in too many shootouts for fear of having your money stolen if you lose. And lastly, if that shootout involved a lawbot, then you discard the top grid card that is currently affecting your car. And that's how the shootout works. And Huckleberry can proceed with his turn. Now that there are no longer any lawbots here on this car, Huckleberry can decide to search. To do this, he simply picks one of the face down tokens on this car, flips it over, and draws that many number of loot cards from the loot deck. So we'll draw two here, and then from the cards we've drawn, we get to score one, as in only get to keep one card. The loot cards you might draw may include abilities that earn you double dollars, or they might give you weapons and equipment. If you score a card like this, you simply earn the double dollar and then discard that card and any other extra cards you drew. If you decide to score a weapon or a piece of equipment, you then keep it by your raider card for future use. Weapons are handy because they may affect how you perform in fights. And you can have multiple weapons on one character. However, before you participate in a fight, you must declare which weapon you intend to use. Just as an example here, let's say Huckleberry had a machine rifle and a fancy two-shot, and he was fighting Typhoon for whatever reason. Before the two players rolled off, Huckleberry would have to decide which weapon he's going to be using. A machine rifle here wouldn't be useful at all because it only lets him destroy extra lawbots. And since he's fighting another raider, that's virtually useless. So he will declare that he's using his fancy two-shot and will only benefit from its effect. So that's how loot cards work. After scoring a loot card, you will take the loot token that you picked and return it face down into the collective loot token pile. Now if another raider was in the same train car with you as you wanted to attempt a search action, they could attempt to oppose you and deny you your search action. To do this, you simply roll off, just like in a showdown. You see, the showdown and the opposed search are both known as fights, so any abilities that affect fights are applicable here. However, some abilities only specifically mention showdowns or opposed searching in this case. So with the keyword being fight here, it means that the results will be exactly the same. Whoever is the winner will get to decide what happens to the losers. And if a raider loses, they might get pushed and have their money taken from them. So if Typhoon here wins, not only does he get to push Huckleberry in a direction, he will steal his money and then have successfully denied him his search action. If Huckleberry was the winner, then he would push Typhoon, steal money if he could, and then may proceed to continue with his search action, which I just described how that works. And of course, as I mentioned, the fourth possible action you can perform is to pass. You don't have to perform all three of your actions, and you could choose to end your turn early by simply passing, and then the turn would proceed clockwise. Now, fast forwarding a bit here, we are back on Mother Superior's turn. And remember, in the previous free round, she didn't successfully make it onto the train yet. So when it is your turn and you are off the train, the only action you can do is to attempt to reboard the train. But also keep in mind, if you start your turn off the train, you still have to draw a high noon card. And then you attempt to reboard in the same manner that I described at the very beginning of the game. Either starting on the caboose for free, or trying to jump onto a later car. But here, Mother will simply play it safe, spend one action to get onto the caboose, and then proceed with the rest of her turn, although now she has one less action. After every player has performed their turns, that ends the round, and a new round will start with each player rolling off to determine who is the dealer for the new round. Whoever wins the roll-off will take the dealer token and be the first player to act in the new round. And so the game goes until the high noon deck runs out. And once that happens, the game will end at the end of the round in which the last card was discarded or drawn. And once that round ends, whomever has the most money is the winner. And that's how you play Rail Raiders Infinite. It's a fast-paced game with a constant back and forth between players who are competing to get the most money. In the future, there will also be expansions released for the game which add a host of new cards, lawbots, raiders, and train cars. If you want to include these into your game, there are one or two ways you can do so. You can simply add the new cards to the respective decks and grow your collection. Or you can swap out card sets so that deck ratios remain the same. Whatever method you decide to use is up to you. This goes for the cards and the train cars. As for the new lawbots, you can replace any number of them with their equivalent ranked lawbot from the base game, or you can simply add them to your collection to have a large lawbot pool to draw from. However, keep in mind, the train can only have a maximum of 14 lawbots, and so once this limit is reached, future drawn lawbots will have to be relocated, just as I mentioned with the main game. But that's it. That's how you play Rail Raiders Infinite. If you enjoyed this tutorial, consider liking and subscribing to the channel to support the release of future tutorials. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and if you'd like to see more of this game, leave them in the comments below or send me an email at cynicallyawesomegames@gmail.com. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and let's keep on rolling.